The I.O. seems straightforward. 10 minutes, 5 minutes Q&A, one literary text, one non-literary text, one global issue. And because it seems so contained, a lot of students walk in underprepared and a lot of I.O.s fail to hit those upper mark bands. There are two main reasons for this. One, a repetitive or generic global issue. Power, identity, trauma. Just the word, maybe a topic, but definitely not an argument. Second, no whole text analysis. Most students treat the I.O. like a paper one, with a global issue stuck on top. So in this video, we're going to see techniques to teach those to our students. Before we begin, I'll be referencing a few resources that are already on the website, so just go to lazilyefficientenglish.com and open the assessment page. Under the I.O. section, you'll find the I.O. teal structure, the double-barreled GI guide, and the plain method versus island method whole text analysis. Also for this case, we're going to be using the novel Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes. It's a really interesting novel, quite challenging, very unique, and worked really well with the kids that I taught. So first, to the double-barreled global issue. This is what I teach my students, to take them from one broad concept into something that is actually an argument. So we have one idea that sits in the extract, the other idea that sits in the whole text, and the movement between them is where the argument actually occurs. So I'm going to build this up by looking at the stages of ideas, and we will have taught this throughout the whole unit. So we can start with the concept of memory. Now that's too big to argue, but it does drive a lot of what happens in the novel. So we split that down into our first binary, authentic memories versus false memories. And then we can go even further to break down those ideas into stage 3 ideas. So under false memories, we can look at how they can be used as self-protection against trauma, as opposed to how they can be formed as a way to overlook our flaws. And then they can be broken down even further. So stage 4 ideas turn into specific claims about the characters in the text, in this case, Tony. Now, importantly, all of these are ideas and concepts that we will have studied in class, done group work analysis on, that the students have engaged with. So to get to our global issue, essentially, we just take these two stage 3 and 4 ideas and put them together. So how false memories can act as self-protection against past trauma, but also how false memories allow us to overlook our own flaws. And ultimately, this can be simplified into how false memories can protect us, but also prevent self-understanding. That's 11 words, but with 2 arguable ideas. One for the extract, one for the whole text. So this will help us with criterion C by avoiding repetition and actually having an argument that the students can develop from the extract to the whole text. But it also helps with criterion A, because by breaking down the ideas into these further stages, they're showing sophisticated implication. Next, we're going to move to how we can teach our students to analyze the whole text. Now in the extract, students are working with specific quotes and specific pieces of evidence. Hopefully they're using the 3-step technique: identify the authorial choice, deconstruct the connotations within it, and then link those to that stage 2 or 3 idea. That close reading work is really important, but it's something students are probably more comfortable with. Instead of isolating single quotes, it tracks broad ACs across the entire text. In the case of Sense of an Ending, we're going to look at narrative structure, because Julian Barnes has 4 key elements. So the first is Tony reminiscing about when he was 18 and his first relationship with a girl called Veronica, who subsequently leaves him for his best friend Adrian. Now in the first parts of the narrative, we accept Tony's point of view that he didn't really care about the breakup because their relationship wasn't that strong. However, then halfway through the story, Julian Barnes introduces the letter. And this is a letter written by Tony to Adrian and Veronica that is full of invective and goes against everything that Tony had said up until that point, partly because Tony didn't even remember sending the letter. Then we have the next part, which is the re-remembering. After the letter, the narrative forces Tony back into the same scenes he had in the first part of the narrative. Now he remembers the music. He remembers that the Severn River in Wales was an intimate moment with him and Veronica. Then Barnes has the 4th part, which is the present day awareness. Tony is still quite uncertain. He has accepted certain parts of who he was when he was 18, but he hasn't fully embraced them. So that narrative loop that Barnes creates, the first telling, the external disruption, the re-examination, the present day reckoning, that is an authorial choice that proves the global issue directly. That false memories protect Tony at first, but the narrative structure forces a return to those same moments, and that return is where the self-understanding should begin, but it's a bit too late for Tony himself. But importantly, when we are going through this plain method, we're not just looking at individual quotes, we're looking at the text as a whole. We're trying to see how Julian Barnes actually crafted the narrative to make a point about false memories. There is another method I show my students, which is called the island method, and that's a little more comfortable because essentially it is taking little mini extracts. Because those mini quote extracts are connected to the second part of the argument, it avoids a lot of the repetition that often limits a student's ability to show their skills in the IO. So there's the system that I use. And one important thing to note is that none of this works because it's only introduced the week before the IO. The stages of ideas, the double barrel GI, plain method, the 3-step technique, the teal structure, all of these are taught in every single class, so students are constantly aware of how to engage with these skills. And luckily for us in Lang and Lit, all of these skills are the same ones they're going to need in the paper 1, paper 2 and HLSA, as well as the IO. For more information, you can go to lazylyefficientIBenglish.com.